you playing?
Hello, and welcome to What the Bleep Are You Playing? A podcast where we play a game many times bad and tell you why the bleep we played it. I am Poke-Sean. This is Thomas Snap and Mason, who has found the secret course. And we played... Pokémon Snap. Wonderful!
Jesus. I was wondering how long. I was legitimately thinking, how long is it going to take for this podcast for Sean to slip into the into the oak voice? And it was literally no seconds.
Like, you could have had the countdown 3, 2,
I love this game. This is my game. And when we were building out our season 2 list, and I was getting towards the end, and I know what my final game was, but I had like this one spot, and I couldn't think. I was like, oh, you know what? I really want to jump into Pokemon, but we're never going to probably jump into one of the mainline games.
Because, I mean, what would there be to say?
We played 40 hours and we RPG'd. But a lot of the side games are really fun. And I think the side game, I don't think it's the best side game, but the one I have some of the fondest memories of is this silly rail shooter where you're a photographer taking pictures of Pokemon to appease the mad god Oak.
We're talking about Puzzle League, right?
Exactly, yeah. Pokemon Snap on the Nintendo 64. Now, we didn't play it on the 64, but we did play it on the Switch online store, or the Switch online, but also with the Switch Nintendo 64 controller. So we did experience it the way it was intended.
Before any of you come at us with it's not the real experience, you didn't have it on 64, bite me.
It is as close to the real experience. It's better than the Wii online experience that they had for.
Really?
It was on the online store. Albeit back then you still could print off pictures.
Oh, nice.
With the Wii.
For those saying, it's not the real experience, buy us an N64 and we'll get back to you.
There you go.
Buy
us an N64 and then we can play this, and then we can also play GoldenEye.
As someone who played this a lot as a kid, it came out in 99, my brother got his 64 in 99, so I played it a lot as a kid. This game and this experience is the exact same. This is the emulate, especially when you have the 64 controller. You're just playing Pokemon Snap, and so we got the real experience, even if it was on the Switch.
Yes.
But
little peek behind the scenes with this episode. Originally, this episode was meant to have a guest star, but scheduling conflicts and all that. Life happens, you know.
Life happens.
The reason there was supposed to be a guest star is because I know jack and shit about Pokemon. Yeah, 3 things, jack and shit.
We were going to try to go back to the Gundam episode where we had needed someone who knew Gundam knowledge beside me to talk this. Well, we were going to try to do that with this because I'm the Pokemon person here. And it didn't work out, but we'll hold on. We'll hold on here.
I think of the 3 of us, I know just enough about Pokemon to hold a conversation about it, and that's it.
But
it's like me with wrestling. I know just enough to hold a conversation.
I can make a great wall. Like, I can make a great thing to talk to, but I don't know shit.
I got into Pokemon when I was 10 or 11. And so my friend had Pokemon Red and I think he had a Game Boy Pocket at the time is what he had. And my cousins got into were in the card game. I think they also had the regular game, but I didn't really play it with them until later. But that was my experience with it. And then so we got into that and then started watching the anime. And we had a couple anime VHSs, several episodes, and then I want to say it was either Christmas or my birthday when I was like 11, and I got a Game Boy Color with Pokemon Red with it. And so, and from that point on, I've purchased every Pokemon game. I've played every Pokemon game, well, every mainline game, and a lot of the side games, and watched way too much of the anime and the movies.
Right.
And
that's kind of how
purchase the cards. Pokemon has been one of those things that's slightly owned part of my soul since that point.
That's kind of the age that I was too when I started getting into Pokemon as well. I didn't really get into like the games as much as you did, but I was definitely very much into the first iteration of the anime.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I may have told you guys about this before, but I don't think I've had it in recording yet. I used to when I would wake up in the morning for school, I would wait for my mom to leave because I was I was how I still am now about anime, embarrassed to watch it around my parents. I would wait for my mom to leave for work, and then I would get on Netflix, and I would perfectly time whatever episode of the anime I was on to when the bus would arrive, so that right as it ended, the bus would start pulling up. I would turn off the TV, throw the remote away, and then leave for the bus. It was perfectly timed every single day that I would finish the episode of Pokemon, turn off the TV, and immediately get on the bus.
Huh. All right. Well,
never once. I can't remember a single time where it was like, oh, the episode isn't over and the bus is here. No, every single time the episode would end and the bus would arrive.
Something that we noticed from this, and this goes from you talking about the anime on it, is in this game, the 64 era is probably the only era where we got the images in the games mirroring a lot of what we saw in the anime.
Yeah.
You know, Oak is very much the look and style he has in the anime, and this in Puzzle League, those side games. Puzzle League even more is following the anime because you have characters like Richie and things like that in it.
Mm-hmm.
But
the design for Oak in the anime is slightly similar to the way he looks in the early games.
Oh yeah, it still is.
So there's a little bit of connection.
There is a difference between what you look on the page and what you look as a animated character, and they follow the animation
that is true, yeah.
for it. But also his voice and everything is meant to mirror the character from the anime,
right?
As well as the Pokemon are taking in these games. They're in like Stadium. They still have the like little sound noises they make. The or you got Cartoon.
I'm sorry. Can we get a couple more of those Pokemon calls? Thank you.
No problem. But in this game, when you're going through and taking pictures of the Pokemon, they do have more of the anime sounds. Things like Electabuzz going, which is an anime-only sound. Because in the game, he's...
How do you remember all of the... My lord.
Anyway.
How much Pokemon do you gotta play to memorize the calls?
A lot.
Of all the Pokemon?
Because, well, in the anime, they had all the Pokemon saying their names.
That's right,
is a lot of it. And so everything's on their names. Whereas in the games and everything, that wasn't necessarily something that was... In the games, it was in the manga and the anime that they more just were, Pika and... Char and Squirtle. So,
right, yeah.
When you had something, but some things, just made sounds still. And Electabuzz is one of them, so it just sticks in your brain. It might be that might be the VHS, that one of those VHSs we had and watched that episode over and over and over and over.
All these comments, and my brain looks like that one bit from SpongeBob where it's like, my mind is an enigma, and it just spilled fucking milk.
It's like, yes, I know the words... it's the Oak. It's the tree professor. He's a professor and he's a tree. I know this.
Up until
one of the
side games, but all of the mainline games, I don't remember that all the professors have been named after trees.
After trees, yeah.
Oak, elm, birch, juniper, and a plethora of others.
Yeah.
Of leather brothers. So that's a fun little thing that they continue through it. But I think
gonna run out of trees eventually.
Have they done Professor Palm yet? And it's just a big fucking hand.
Goddamn.
But I think this game, the thing about this game is that it has such a cult following and a nostalgia around it that eventually they did with the outcries and the people like, we need Pokemon Snap and the love of it, that it did eventually get a sequel 20 years later, almost 20 years later.
It was literally just called New Pokemon Snap.
New Pokemon Snap.
Yeah.
Which the game is fun. I enjoy it, but the classic is the classic for a reason.
Right.
And it was...
Does New Pokemon Snap also take like 30 minutes to beat?
No, it is a little bit longer. I mean, this game is not hard, especially if you know what you're doing and you know how to play a rail shooter. And it's not meant to be. The goal is to like get through the stuff and then the goal is to keep going through and trying to take better and better and better in pictures and finding more and more Pokemon the secrets and different things you can do. The replayability of each level is quite large because there's just a lot of different secret stuff you can unlock and do with each Pokemon, whether that's convincing Pikachu to climb on a surfboard and surf, or to get a Charizard to jump out of a magma crater.
Yeah, what I learned from this game is that I would be a terrible reporter, that I would be a terrible Pokemon photographer. Not because I take bad pictures, but because I kept beating these poor Pokemon in the head with apples. Eat, bitch, eat!
I was going to say it because you had a boss like Professor Oak going, this is not good enough. Bring me better.
I was honestly...
Oh, you're 0.01% off from the center. I'm giving you no points. You're barely in the center. Double points. Good job. I'm taking it back to your knee, Professor Oak.
Oak is a harsh judge.
I was honestly surprised by the level of interactivity in this on rails type game. I thought it would just be sort of, all the Pokemon are here. You can't really move them or anything. You just kind of have to take the pictures where they are. But you can they move around. A lot of the smaller ones, at least, move around quite a lot.
It really does take the rail mechanics of a shooter, removes the gun, but still keeps a lot of the mechanics of trying to unlock and move things around that a lot of those type of games had.
It actually, progression-wise, reminds me a lot of House of the Dead.
Yes, actually, very much.
In House of the Dead, you do get moments where it's like, you shoot zombies this way, you go this way, but if you shoot this zombie, you go this way to a whole nother path to save these other civilians. So it reminded me a lot of that. So once that clicked, I'm like, oh, it's House of the Dead, but instead of killing zombies, I'm taking pictures of Pokemon. Then it clicked for me.
It's as simple as, beat a level or shoot a certain amount of Pokemon pictures to progress on the path, but sometimes there's things like explode an Electrode to find the path. Get a Porygon to push a button. Hit a Squirtle up into a Mankey, knock a Mankey down, and then knock him onto a button to unlock the... Yeah, that frustrated. That was the longest one for me. I was like, come on.
Because you got to Rube Goldberg this shit?
There's a lot of... But it's a lot of fun. I think the thing about this game is it is, we'll get into the gameplay a little bit more in a second, but this game is very, very fun, replayable, and it's a game that you can sit down and play for, maybe you only have 15 minutes. Cool. I'm only going to play a level. Or if you're bored for a day and just sitting down, you can play for long periods of time and try to beat your score. It is not... you can be a hardcore gamer or just a occasional play, occasionally playing, and you can get a lot out of this game if you want to.
It's a very relaxing time, and I would actually go as far to say as, if you're like Thomas and you don't know a lot about Pokemon, this is a great place to start, I think.
Agreed. I think it really is, because it really doesn't take any Pokemon knowledge to actually get into the game, aside from maybe being like, I know that Magikarp Gyarados is based on the story of the climbing the waterfall, so if I knock the Magikarp into the waterfall, I'll get a Gyarados,
Right. So you could...
God forbid this was my first exposure to Pokemon. You do that, it's like, Magikarp into the waterfall, and the Gyarados comes out. I would be like, what the fuck is that?
But yeah, it's a very relaxing time, and it's also it's a great way to kind of dip your feet into the Pokemon world. If you want to stick with just this style of game, that's fine. It's great. It's a relaxing time. If you want to keep going into the Pokemon world after this, where you're taking down Poke terrorists, then yeah, you can do that too.
Pokemon PETA later.
Yeah.
I think we can go back in time a little bit here for this, and more about the development here. And, You can fit into
really
this. Is that it came out in '99, so at the time, Pokemon had the games in '96, the anime and manga in '97. So we're into the Pokemon at this point.
This was '99 was the same year the movie came out, wasn't it?
Yes. So the first movie.
So this is peak Pokemon craze.
The first season has happened. Gold and Silver are just on the horizon. At this point, Pokemon is kind of at its initial peak of popularity, and it is there. This is actually a great way to capitalize on it for maybe non-fans at the point. That's kind of a thing that's really interesting. But also, this game almost wasn't a thing. It was announced in '95 as Jack and the Beans, Jack and the Beanstalk rail shooter that was probably going to be photography as well. In the '95, developing for the 64 DD. which is the computer floppy drive enhancement to the 64 that only really came out in Japan and only had 5 real games for it, I think, 5 or 6?
Something like that. It wasn't a lot. But what a weird concept.
I mean, you say that, but...
It's not uncommon. The Nintendo, the NES, the Super NES had different... The Famicom's at least had different hookups. The Sega...
No. I'm not talking about the DD. I'm talking about the Jack and the Beans game.
Oh, okay.
That is such a weird concept to me.
You say that, but the entire concept of this series is, let's take a cat, give it electric powers, and you can catch him in a fucking ball.
But how often did you ever sit down and think, I wonder what would happen if I took a boulder and a magnet and made them fight?
Well, more often than you think, actually. I was very bored a lot as a child. But anyways, it's still, I don't know, just
picturing Mason as a kid sitting there with a rock and a magnet and being like, fight!
Like,
Why
aren't you working?
Why can't I magnet rocks? Anyways.
Can we get Pokemon, Mom? We have Pokemon at home.
But, I don't know, just the idea of, like, we're going to make an on-rail shooter, but instead of shooting things, you're taking pictures of Pokemon makes more sense than taking pictures of, like, storybook. I'd rather be the storybook characters.
I think some of it is also...
Well,
I've said this type of game doesn't get made now, especially once it got turned into a Pokemon game, or if it does, it's a small indie darling type of thing.
Right.
But the fact that like this game was such an interesting idea, and then I think it was like 96 or 97, it transferred over into becoming a Pokemon game. Still going to be for the 64 DD. And finally, with all the delays on that sort of system and things like that, they finally released it in 99 just for the 64.
Well, you see, I can actually see the fairy tale elements coming in, because imagine it is the same thing. Imagine you're just Jack, but you're taking pictures of all these fairy tales. Throw a ball, and the big bad wolf blows down the pig's house. That's kind of what I'm imagining. Now, would it be profitable? Probably fucking not. So it's a good thing they turn it into a Pokemon game.
The reason they switched to a Pokemon game is they sat down and they were like... and they're a little ways in development, and they just didn't feel like there was any point to their game. That's the other thing, is like, we kind of feel like our game right now is pointless. So that's from them. Like, they just didn't know what they had an idea, but I don't think they really knew how to flesh it out with what they had. And so when it became Pokemon, because Pokemon popularity, they kind of found a purpose to what they were trying to do. But it's fun. You can still see the title in the opening sequence when it says Jack and the Beans.
That's obviously the name of our main character, Jack and the Beans. Last name.
That would be like if in the opening to Zombie U they had the Alien Invader game title in front of it that it was originally supposed to be. Like, that's a weird thing to me.
Jack and the Beans is like somebody I would name in like a Madden or an NCAA football game as like a recruit. My brother and I, we'd come up. This is a real fun tangent, but like we would play seasons. Long-running dynasties or franchise modes, and we would always, especially if we were NCAA, we'd create like a super good character and then have to fight over recruiting him. But it'd always have a really dumb name, like Cat in the Hat or something like that.
Lord.
Like, so, like, it's always a dumb, like, Cat in the Hat. But, like, that's exactly, so Jack and the Beans is exactly something we would name.
Jesus.
But I think because of kind of the development craze of this game, which I think actually helps a lot, is that they really spent a lot of times, and while making the game, it's not a long game, it's not a super complicated game, but they allowed to make all the interactive elements really there, that the development time, you get a really fleshed out experience in this game that plays really well on the 64, which is, sometimes not always true, because 64 and then the GameCube were notorious for being hard to develop for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it makes sense that they went this route with Pokemon, in all honesty, because I say I don't know shit about Pokemon. I know a little bit. I was mostly being overzealous, but like I really do not know anything about Pokemon other than, hey, they look cute, I guess. So
I mean, you say that, but there are Pokemon that are made out of literal garbage. So not all of them are adorable.
I love me some Garbivore.
Yeah.
Anyway,
the sad part is I genuinely don't know if you're joking with that name or not.
Oh, we're not.
No, that is real.
So in Black and White, they fought.
Kill myself.
They fought. So if you go back to some of the Pokemon lore in the original, is things like Voltorb and Magnemite that whatever the Pokemon was, as they evolved into the species they are now, kind of took on human characteristics as humans, things like that. So like the Magnemites around the things like that. The Grimers turned more of the sludge, and because they grew up in the toxic areas of factories and things like that.
So evolution.
Yeah. So in Black and White, whereas the game is the region is based on, it's just New York. That's the region is based around New York. So yes, they're gonna have the garbage Pokemon, Trubbish and Gardevoir.
Yeah, it goes from a little bag of garbage to a massive overflowing pile with cigarettes for fingers.
I love Gardevoir. He's so dumb, and I love him. So interesting thing about Pokemon Snap, to get back on to it.
A lot of times you just kind of want to see the Pokemon. A lot of times you just kind of want to make it as kind of a sightseeing tour. And this is that, but, it's more interactive. You have to take these pictures. You can do these things to make them do cool things to take better pictures. It's a very simple gameplay loop, but simple, more often than not, clicks that little thing in the back of your brain that makes you satisfied. So,
as this game was described as being addictive by a lot of critics.
Yeah.
Like, that was his thing.
I can see that.
It sold 1.5 million units. Very, very popular.
That doesn't surprise me.
But the big thing for it, and why it had such longevity after the fact, and even as the 64 cycle, was it was one of the most rented games. Partly because Blockbuster would have a machine in there that if you brought the cartridge in, you could print off your Pokemon pictures.
Now listen, I'm not saying that anyone who would mail us one of those would be a national hero, but that is what I'm saying, please.
I very much would love
Can
to
we have one?
But imagine, from just a business model here, imagine...
Just walk into Sean's house and it's just by his door. What the?
Imagine...
You
you're
have
running
the
a rental
cartridge
store,
behind it.
and you are trying to rent out a game, and your best marketing here is, hey, rent that game for a couple days, then come back and print the pictures off. And then if you want it again, you can rent it again later.
And then print off the pictures again.
How many Blockbuster employees probably thought that would go nowhere, and then 700 kids came swarming through like Day of the fucking Dead.
It's such a good idea, and it was very popular. There's also a Japanese store that did it as well. Lawson stores in Japan. So they did this great idea of this game that you're taking pictures of Pokemon. You want those pictures in real life.
You think the one Blockbuster left has that?
We'll
one Blockbuster in Ohio. Or
what
whatever.
the bleep travels to the one Blockbuster?
Is it? I thought it was Alaska.
No, I don't remember where it is.
It's out there somewhere. We'll find it.
It's literally the last Blockbuster in America. It's a tourist attraction. It's an Airbnb too.
Oh, that's right. I remember that. Oh, that would be really funny if they still had.
But we've talked a lot about games that went through development hell, or were developed on different systems, or developed on different peripherals, or things like that for it that hurt the game, that the game was hurt. This might be one of the first games where actually the game was enhanced by going through these trials. A lot of it, dealing with being something entirely different from Pokemon, being turned into Pokemon, being developed for a peripheral on the 64 that never took off and didn't hit North America. I think it actually kind of helped it, as they really fleshed out a lot of the things in this game, and I think that partly helps to the addictive nature of it.
It's going to sound kind of odd, but it reminds me a lot of X-Men Origins Wolverine's development. Because with all the delays the movie got, the game was finished at a certain point. So basically, all the time they had with the movie's delays just caused it to become more and more polished until we got the actually really good game. And I'm kind of wondering if something like that didn't happen here, where they had a deadline for the disk drive, but then the disk drive got canned basically in everywhere except Japan.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and even then, it was barely around.
Yeah, so I'm wondering if they didn't just hey, well, you have this game, we can't release it now, so do things with it, and they're sick. We have 2 years. Let's just polish that.
That's fair.
Let's keep working on it. Let's keep seeing what little interactive things. And there's just popular things at the time, because Pokemon Yellow was a thing, and Pikachu's popularity. But with that, you had things like Flying Pikachu and Surfing Pikachu, and being able to get them both in the game. Those were both big, fun little Easter eggs that you could unlock, and just making each level there's just so many layers on each level.
Yeah, all the levels are so full of life. I made a joke while we were playing it that it kind of felt like you were playing through like a Crocodile Hunter episode, but in the Pokemon world, which I would kill to watch that. I want that to be a real thing.
That'd be the one Pokemon show I watch. Even better if it's in live action. So it's just a real ass hunter dude, but with like Pokemon in costumes.
You could get his kid. I can't remember his name, but he's got a TikTok account now. He's really funny.
The guy walking through the Everglades?
Yes, yeah. Get him to do, yes.
Yeah.
I just want to see him boop a Gyarados.
It's like James Owens or something?
I think it's like,
I don't know. It's a guy, he walks around the Everglades, he boops poisonous animals, and is barefoot, and calls gators swamp puppies.
Yeah, something like that, but for Pokemon.
It comes really funny that I kind of think this is the game that is most remembered of the Pokemon 64 games.
I think so, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Not saying anything negative about Pokemon Stadium 1 and 2. I bought them both. I famously for myself, and pre-ordered Pokemon Stadium 2 so I could get the special VHS that had all the special bonus stuff that you could see. A VHS that had trailers.
You nerd.
Special bonus VHS. You put it in. Thanks for the money, Dick.
You say that, but that's basically what it is.
And then it turns to Sean and it does the Looney Tunes thing where he turns into a giant sucker.
Yeah, it's just the jackass.
It does the Simpsons movie. Everyone who wants this is a sucker.
Especially you.
So, I really think that it's kind of cool that this game is the one that came out of the 64 cycle and had such great legs. It got re-released on the Wii or the Wii U, they got released.
I think it might have gotten re-released on both.
It might have been both ability to have it, and then obviously the new one, and then released on the Switch store. But it's a cool a game that went through development hell, that had a lot of issues. Is this like cult classic? That's this really fun, addictive game that is still remembered 24 years later, and I think that's really cool. Like I don't have any like profound thing other than to say that it's just neat.
Yeah, it's very chill.
This is not a very complicated game to talk about. We basically described it. You take pictures of the Pokies, but like
you poke them on to make them come out of their hiding places.
But like it's the best way to describe this game is cute.
Yeah,
that's kind of the way, and not in an insulting way, but like in a way where like it's a cute game. It's an enjoyable.
In a
game.
way, it's also one of the best uses of the 64 controller.
Yeah,
which is. It's the 64 controller. Everyone knows
it's an odd controller.
It's an odd decision to make the controller the way they did. It is strange, but this game really does capitalize on all of the functions of it. Whether you're good with inverted cameras or not, usually I'm very bad at it.
I am not. I am.
There's a reason with
inverted cameras.
I had to get used to it by the end. By the end of my time with this game, aka all 2 levels, I was mostly used to it.
It's a little jerky. Everything moves a little faster than you'd like, but I think that's trying to replicate, trying to take pictures quickly. You have 3 special abilities. You have you first one you unlock is your apples. You can feed Pokemon, and they'll move up. And
I didn't realize those were unlockable things.
Yeah, so when you start, you do not have any of those, and you just have the beach level, and you just slowly unlock the apples. Which allows you in the tunnel then to explode the electrode. You eventually then unlock the what are they called? The ball, the like disruptor balls or whatever they are that make the Pokemon irritated at you. And then near the end, you unlock like the Pokeflute, the speed, speeding up and things like that through it. And you just slowly unlock everything.
Yeah.
It's one of those games that like you start with nothing, but it's fairly easy to unlock things, so it doesn't feel like a problem that you're.
That's what I was gonna ask. I'm like, do you have to play the first level like 5 times to get the apples or whatever?
No. So you unlock as long as you get enough pictures. I think it's 2 or 3 on it. You unlock tunnel pretty quickly.
Okay.
But then the ones that have like the extra. Where you have to go off a branching path to unlock your next level. Those sometimes you have to play the level 2 or 3 times because you just have to figure out what you're doing. But usually when you get out, Professor Oak will be like, "Did you notice that electrode at the end? Maybe if you throw an apple at him." Or he's like, "Did you see that button? maybe you should inspect around it. And finally I was like, is that what is in that? Oh, and then you just throw Porygon out.
Why didn't you tell me that before I went in?
I wonder what would happen if you went through an entire level and you didn't take any pictures.
He's just like, the fuck are you doing here? But there's a lot of this...
Enjoying the sights, bitch.
It's
a free trip.
It's pretty basic. You get through the worlds. Eventually, when you unlock all the worlds, then Oak is like, hey, did you notice that there are signs in each level? Take a picture of all of them, and maybe we'll figure out what's going on. It's saying you're going to unlock the last world. And it's, you take a picture of... in the first world, there's a couple of rocks put together that look like a Kingler. The second world is the pincer light up on the side when there. Yeah. The third world is the... when you get the Vileplume up, you can take a picture of a Cubone, a rock that looks like a Cubone. Fourth world is... That's the volcano, so that's where you toss a little ball in one of the magma pits, and it comes up and it looks like it's a coffin. Then there's a later one, the lights that look like Mewtwo, and then the Dugtrio Mountain. And you take a picture of all of them, and he's like, wow, you took all of these. They're like constellations. Hey, I found a hidden path.
Wow. That's what it took?
Yeah.
It took all that.
Yeah, so you do have to play the levels a bunch over and over again, but I think the addictive nature, it's the same thing as like, if you're trying to play Tetris or something, that other simple addicting game, you're going to keep playing the same thing kind of over and over.
Again, House of the Dead, you want to save all those civilians, so you play through the level each time, taking different paths.
So a big part of it is replayability. So you got to make sure it's fun if you're going to make your game based on replayability. Like playing the same level, but trying to get different results over and over again is part of the charm of the game. Mm-hmm. But overall, I say the controls I think are good for the 64, as good as the 64 controller can be. I think they're really good, and they actually aren't awful 20 years later.
No.
The camera, as I said, is a little herky-jerky in parts. That's, but it maybe could be a little tighter, but I also think that's, again, meant to be... It's meant to feel like trying to quickly spin around and take camera pictures. And
it's going to sound weird. I honestly almost had the exact opposite reaction. I almost thought it was too slow for a bit.
Oh, fair. Okay.
I maybe I'd have to replay it again to really cement my feelings on it, but there's bits where I'm just straight up like, no, this way. I'm going this way. Go this way!
That's fair. It's interesting that we both kind of had different opinions on the... Like, that's cool. Like, both of us could play the game and be like, I have a different feeling on this.
Well, like I said, I only played the 2 levels.
That's
so
fair.
Maybe if
And then I think the big selling point for this game, even more I think than Pokemon Stadium, is... And I know we're talking about a 20-year-old game, but the graphics were such a big selling point for this game. That you got to interact with 3D Pokemon, which is something that, like, Stadium has a lot of it, but even then, it's not as much interactive as this game feels. And it was like, you can interact with 150, you can make them evolve, you can do different things.
We forgot to mention the best thing about this game. You get to see Chubby Pikachu in his full 3D glory. It's 5 out of 5 perfect game.
You get to see Fat Pikachu, baby.
I love me some Fat Pikachu. He is
chunky boy Pikachu.
He is adorable, and I wish he would make a comeback in the games now.
It is very cute.
Didn't like one of the newer games with the big Godzilla modes, like Pikachu's Godzilla mode. Fat Fuck Pikachu.
Yeah, they brought him back for it.
That's awesome.
When he's up big, yeah, you got one of those. But yeah, I think the big thing for this is the gameplay is like it's fun. Like I don't have a lot of like in-depth things for it because there's not a lot for it, but it's just really fun.
It's very chill.
Yeah,
it's very chill.
Very relaxing.
I could imagine if I still had my Switch playing this game after like a long day and just decompressing.
Yeah, it's fun just to sit down and like you're like, wow, I played for an hour and a half and I didn't even realize. It is easy to get lost in this world.
Absolutely,
which is a lot of fun, and the 64 was more built on multiplayer experiences, so it is fun. It is interesting to find a really just chill one-player experience because
absolutely
64 had with the 4 control ports. It was big. It was like you have to have a 4-player minigame and everything. Like there has to be a way to play all 4 players. In this game, nope. They're like it's 1 player. Enjoy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think graphically, it's cute. I think that's the thing is they kept... Sometimes the Pokemon graphics can take the 2D sprites and like when they make it, you're like, oh, I kind of like them more in 2D the way they are. But I think the 64 a lot of times, especially this and the first Pokemon Stadium, because there's a few in the second Pokemon Stadium, they're like, oh, I like the sprite better a little bit more. Mm-hmm. But they've really... It seems like a perfect translation for a lot of these. When Dragonite jumps out of that whirlpool, you're like, oh, that's the guy that I found in the Sprite there, and that's cool, and he's flying, and I like that. That's the Dragonite that Jesse and James stopped with a frying pan in the first movie.
Again, spilled milk because I.
But yeah, it's a fun experience. Would this have been like? Wait, did this come out before Coliseum?
Oh yeah, Coliseum is on the GameCube. So.
Oh no, not Coliseum, Stadium. That's what I mean.
I believe the first Stadium was out before this. I believe.
So this wasn't the first time that we were seeing.
If it is, they came out really close together.
So it wasn't the first time that we were seeing Pokemon in 3D, but it was one of the first, and I do think that is cool.
Yeah,
and it's and you get a lot more motion from them in this game than you do in Stadium.
And Stadium has a lot of different fun little motions, and maybe we'll cover one of those someday. But there's just so much in those games to do a lot of it, and I don't think Pokemon has ever in 3D has fully replicated the wildness that they created on the 64. From just a puzzle game that's pretty fun, to Snap that is such a unique, interesting game, to the stadiums that are games that aren't replicated. They're Mario parties, but also they're Pokemon games without stories. Their ability to store your Game Boy game characters on it. There's just so much in those games. Those games are dense as all hell and stuff that just have never come back. Coliseum does a few things with it on the GameCube, but it is still just a 3D Pokemon game. It is the most mature Pokemon game, that and Gale of Darkness, because the studios were like, we want to make games that are about teenagers and not kids. And so that's why everyone is aged up in those games. But I think
it's time for the main character to blow up a villain's base.
Yes.
But that's, I think, just a fun thing from the 64 era that is just kind of a bygone era that, like, there's a nostalgia for me that's like, I really liked this era of Pokemon in terms of the 3D. Like,
absolutely.
Not necessarily better or worse games, but I just like the aesthetic and the look. And Snap, I think, embodies that aesthetic and look better than any game.
Absolutely.
But on this podcast, we ask two important questions of every game that we play. First one is, how does it hold up?
This is another one of those games, and we've played games like this before, where graphically it's a little rough. But gameplay-wise, it's held up really
There are
well.
some cartoony graphics that, things like that, mouths just kind of are an endless void inside of them.
And, I personally, I'm probably going to get a lot of flack for this, but I'm of the mind that the N64 graphically has not aged well at all.
No, it hasn't.
The PS1 N64
Era?
And the Saturn would have been that time too. That whole era is just not.
It was
aged
huge
well
technological leaps that a lot of those games graphically haven't aged amazingly. There's some I think that leaned more into the cartoony nature, and I think this game actually leans a little bit more, and that helps it age better.
Yeah.
I think of things on the PlayStation like Spyro that aged graphically really well,
or like on the N64 with like Banjo and Kazooie,
yeah.
and Conquer. Those have held up better.
Or things like Mario 64 still looks fine, even if it's a little. But they do feel the 64 does feel at this point like a 20-year-old system. Like the graphics feel older. I think because of the leaps in technology, sometimes even more than some like the Super Nintendo graphics or things like that feel older, just because it is so. That was when we were attempting real life people. We were trying to create realism to the systems, and well, it feels 20 years old when we started doing that. So,
but again, it's one of those things where like the gameplay loop is so relaxing and fun that it's like it doesn't really matter.
No, not even really a little bit. It's fun, holds up. I think this whole game holds up really well.
It's relaxing, and that's kind of the best thing I can say about it. It's just a relaxing time. You lay back, you take pictures of Pokemon, and you relax, unless you're me, in which you scream at them because you're not doing what you're doing.
It was less the Pokemon, it's more you start screaming at Oak at the end of like, why are you such a dictator, Oak?
Yeah, going through the forests and everything, taking pictures of the Pokemon, that's fine. Oak at the end, no, fuck that bitch. I'm not doing this for you, I'm doing this for my scrapbook.
I'm doing this for me.
Yeah, the second question we ask of every game that we play: would you like to see a remake or reimagining in a modern setting? Seeing as we've kind of already gotten a reimagining.
Yes, so since we've already had something like
and
that.
And remasters already.
Since it's been re-released multiple fucking times, most recently on the Switch, and since we've gotten new Pokemon Snap, I've gotten a little bit creative with this. We've already had a unconventional Nintendo game that was part of a larger series that got adapted into an arcade game in Luigi's Mansion. So what I'm saying is, I would absolutely play an arcade machine version of Pokemon Snap. If it's like one of those big ones with like the seats in, it's like the Jurassic Park one or the Halo one.
Yeah, or the Luigi's Mansion.
Or the Luigi's Mansion, yeah, like the Luigi's Mansion one where you're in a seat and you have like a big camera shaped controller that you could like look through, and there's like a little tiny screen of where you're aiming and stuff. I would play the hell out of that.
Honestly, that's about where I was gonna think.
Arcade reboot.
Yes,
because like you said, we've already gotten several versions of this. Not at all related to games. I would kill to see like this specifically be adapted into like a short little anime, like where Todd Snap is taking pictures of all the Pokemon. It's like, oh, you found God. I what?
Hey, by the way, here's God, and he's going to judge you. Oh, look, Hades is down there guarding the underworld. The what now? There's an underworld? Or if you go to, like, old, like, Pokemon, like, the Pokemon graveyard, where in the first game, like, you go and there's a mad ghost that is the mother of a Cubone.
The purple place. Purple Town.
Lavender Town.
That
has the music that literally...
No, purple place.
Yeah. But, yeah, it would be kind of fun to see, actually, this adapted into something, like an anime would be kind of cool.
Yeah, but I think Mason has the best thing where, reboot it as an arcade game. That's kind of what I'm thinking.
Yeah,
you have like a big camera controller and like buttons on the thing itself for like the disruptor ball and stuff like that.
I can get behind it. I think for me, I would love an arcade. Honestly, I would. Hey Nintendo, we'll pour quarters into that machine like nobody's business.
Right.
So if you're wanting to get every penny, here you go. But I think what I would like is just to see kind of expanding on some of these worlds. Like, I would like to go into the like island. I don't want to like Pokemon games that aren't about catching the Pokemon.
Yeah.
But interacting and being around them. I kind of like this idea, like, that are calm, simple games, but around these crazy creatures. So what Animal Crossing, not Animal Crossing, but kind of like Harvest Moon-esque, like you're living in like this world, but Pokemon, but you're just trying to farm or exist.
So what we're saying is, Pokemon Company, My Pokemon Ranch 2, for the Switch, make it now.
No, one of those Cabela hunting games, but
instead
instead of hunting, you're just taking pictures with the camera.
Okay, I was gonna say, if you're actually suggesting a Pokemon hunting game, I'd be like,
Why would I suggest?
I would hate that.
You have to choose to shoot Pikachu.
I mean, part of me thinks it'd be
Pikachu. I shoot you.
I'm so sorry, dear summer child.
Oh, Jesus. You get like the X-ray of where the bullet goes into the Pikachu.
Old
like,
yellow.
Oh no. Old yellow.
I'm going to hell.
The dark turn at the end of this episode. That's Pokemon Snap. What do you guys think? Do you have a fondness for the 64 era like I do? Or what era of Pokemon is your favorite? Go ahead and let us know by sending us an email to bleepyouplaying@gmail.com. That's bleepyouplaying@gmail.com. Send us an email and maybe we'll read it here on one of these episodes. Or if you'd like to tell us to play a game, maybe you want us to play Mystery Dungeon. Or Pokemon Puzzle League.
Mystery Dungeon, the one Pokemon game I'm actually a fan of.
Well, you can. You can tell us to do that by subscribing to our Super Bleephead tier over on Patreon. Patreon.com/whatthebleep. Subscribe, $15 a month, and tell us what you'd like us to play, and we will play and then tell you about it. $15 a month. That's patreon.com/whatthebleep. And we'll be back next time in the wrong trousers.
I liked it.